Hello, and welcome to my review of The Killing Joke, the latest movie from DC Animation, a division which I feel is getting sloppier and sloppier with each new release, to the point that I actually think that this adaptation is going to be a black mark on the careers of Bruce Timm and Brian Azzarello. But before we get started in earnest, I wanted to put out a disclaimer, and that's that this review has slight spoilers. And what I mean by slight is that if you've read The Killing Joke, don't worry about it. You can totally watch this review and still experience the movie with its twists and turns, right? But if you have not read The Killing Joke, even still, I think you could probably watch this, but you might want to go watch the animated movie first so that you can go in totally cold if that's how you like to experience these stories. But I have to say, on that note, it's a real shame that anyone would watch this animated movie without having first read the source material, because the source material is so far superior to what Bruce Timm, Brian Azzarello, and director Sam Liu have done here, that it's really tragic that to many, this would be their version of The Killing Joke. And that's why I am such a strong proponent of them doing original stories in other mediums instead of adapting these classic comic book stories, because just go read the comics. They're very good. And then we would have even more great stories if they would go and tell some original ones in, both animated movies and even the feature films. That's why I'm so happy to hear that Ben Affleck, wants to maybe take, cherry pick from a couple of stories, but wants to basically tell an original Batman story. Thank you. All right, so what's ultimately the most disturbing about this version of The Killing Joke isn't what the Joker does to the Gordons, which is what is supposed to be the case, but instead what the movie itself does to Barbara Gordon, and that is hypersexualize her. Now, it's very important for me to point out that I have no problem with having sexual characters, and in fact, in the Bat universe, there are a number of sexual characters, both men and women, but Barbara Gordon has never been one of them. However, I guess Brian Azzarello and Bruce Timm are not particularly familiar with the character, which seems crazy to me because they work at DC and can easily go to the library or the archives and check out all the material. But anyway, they don't even seem to have a passing knowledge of the character. So I have to say, though, like the Paris Franz character, that's a pretty funny name. The Paris Franz character, that the villain that she's dealing with for the first half of the film, that's fine. I had no problem with him, actually, because guys like that actually exist. And I think it's perfectly believable that Barbara Gordon would find herself interacting with such a misogynistic creep, who I have to say, I thought was a pretty clever villain to his credit. Sometimes he made mistakes, but he was new to the game. I thought he showed potential as a character. But it's more than just her having to deal with the Paris Franz character. And in fact, there are so many egregious examples of hypersexualization when it comes to this depiction of Barbara Gordon that I actually was able to make a list. All right? So she's flattered by, and all of these things are super out of character. Again, another vigilante, another character in the Bat universe might have totally acted this way, but Barbara Gordon would not. All right? So she's flattered by Franz's flirtations. Not anything that would happen with Barbara in any other depiction of the character. They give her a gay friend at the library, like a really vamping gay friend, and I was like, why do you think that's like R-rated? I don't understand, right? But he's only there to talk to her about her sex life. I was like, man, you need a better friend. He's a bad influence. He's just putting you in that headspace, Barbara, right? And it's also totally inappropriate workplace conversation. Then when she's using the computer at the library to look into surveillance cameras, which, by the way, she should not be doing, okay? I don't know why her friend at the library isn't like, that's suspicious. But anyway, when she spots a suspicious character on the surveillance camera, her friend immediately makes the situation sexual, saying, oh, you always like bad boys, Barbara. And it's kind of like, really? I'm looking at surveillance tape. Why would you take it there? And also, I'd like to point out that Barbara Gordon has never liked bad boys. Everyone has a type, right? A type of person they're most attracted to. And I'm not saying they can't sometimes like somebody outside of that, but people, saying someone has a type exists for a reason. And Barbara Gordon has always liked the good guys, basically, right? And then also, her costume in the film is really tight. And I know that in some point in the comics she wore high heels, but that was really a reflection of the times. And if you're trying to do something as modern as this telling, you really need to get rid of the heels. But even beyond the heels, she doesn't seem to be wearing much of a support bra. She's walking around sticking her chest out all the time. It's just ridiculous. Also, she has the same body movement as a character as the hookers, right? Now, I understand that sometimes you can save money by having the same animations for the different characters, right? But, you have to, come on, spend a little money, DC. And Barbara, and also she's walking in high heels, which affects your movement. It makes it a little more sexual, which is one of the reasons women wear high heels on dates. But, it seems very out of character and inappropriate. And then also, even with the filmmakers, when they showed Barbara jogging, back to her apartment, the camera, actually, I couldn't believe they did this. They focused squarely on her torso to highlight her breasts and to some degree her butt when she was jogging. And I was just like, really? Come on, But I think the most egregious thing that they had Barbara do is that when Batman didn't call her back after they slept together, oh, so embarrassing. She just moped around for a while and, didn't don her Batgirl garb. And then even when she was sitting on that water tower, she was like, should I call him? Should I not call him? And it was like, here's an idea, Barbara. Why don't you just go fight crime while you're waiting to see if Batman can get back to you and you give him some space? I mean, it really made it seem like she only became Batgirl to get close to Batman because she was sexually attracted to him, right? I mean, if there's no burning desire there to fight crime, then what is she doing besides the alternative, right? And so then when they had the end credits sequence with, establishing Oracle, it made it seem really false. You're like, oh, so you're just still trying to get, stay in Batman's vicinity because maybe he'll change his mind. And I felt like, her gay friend from the library should have come crashing in. Like that really funny YouTube series from a couple of years ago when they were like famous literary characters. If only they had a sassy gay friend, it would have totally solved everything. So I wish that in this case, her gay friend from the library, her sassy gay friend from the library would have come in and said, Barbara, he's just not that into you. So it made Barbara just seem a little bit pathetic and sad. Now also though, to be fair, by removing Dick Grayson from the Bat family, they do have a problem with the dynamic. So I could understand why the door was open to go the sexual route, but they still should have realized that that's just not something Barbara Gordon herself would do. But it is problematic not to have Dick Grayson there. And let me tell you why, right? To some degree, I understand that this movie exists in a vacuum, but it doesn't because it ties into all the other Batman stories. And especially also for people who are new to the characters or aren't very familiar with them. But the important thing to remember that in the comics, when Barbara Gordon decided she wanted to be Batgirl, she really crashed the boys-only party that was Batman and Robin, right? So she brought that feminine energy into the group, and also she wasn't invited. So it created a little bit of a weird situation. And the other thing that was interesting about it is that, Dick Grayson had lived a very sheltered life with Batman, staying mostly at the manor. At that point, he didn't really go to school in the comics. They've changed that recently. But so here all of a sudden was someone close to his own age for him to interact with. And that also kind of threw off the Batman and Robin dynamic. And yes, it was supposed to be Dick Grayson that liked Barbara, not Bruce Wayne. But what was interesting about that was that Barbara was a few years older and has always been a few years older than Dick Grayson, like 3 or 4 years. So that's why in the comics, Batgirl Year One, by the way, is a fabulous depiction of Barbara Gordon taking on the mantle of the Bat. But anyway, that's why she's initially reluctant to return Dick Grayson's romantic interest. Although this version of Barbara Gordon in The Killing Joke would have totally jumped his underage bones and then went to the library and told her sassy gay friend all about it. It's unsophisticated writing. And I would like to point out to anyone who's an aspiring writer, not all people act the same, and that goes for women and it goes for men. Everyone's different. You have to figure out their motivations, their life experiences, what drives them, what's going to influence them based on past experiences, what their dreams and goals are. That's all factors in there. And to boil people down to like simplistic sexual urges is, again, unsophisticated. And it actually, I like Brian Azzarello's writing usually quite a bit, but this reminds me of his Joker story from 2008, which for the most part is excellent. One of the other best Joker stories I've ever read in addition to The Killing Joke. But anyway, he reduced Harley Quinn there to a mute stripper character that, hung out with the Joker, and was like his girlfriend, but literally just was, like a prop, like a mannequin that hung out with him. And that was unfortunate. I thought it was a weird choice at the time, but now seeing what he decided to do here, I'm starting to understand that Brian Azzarello just can't write women. All right, so anyway, now the weird thing about also the first part of this Barbara Gordon prologue, or that they've added to the movie, is that it does not enhance the Killing Joke story at all, but in fact distracts from it, which is unfortunate, because the whole point of Barbara Gordon being shot in the Killing Joke is twofold. One, Barbara Gordon is shocked that it's that persona which is shot by the Joker and not Batgirl, right? Like, she feels some degree of safety as Barbara Gordon, because she's in her personal life, she's not putting herself out there on the line. And so I think that's one of the reasons that she's in such shock when she opens the door. So many people have been like, why didn't she immediately spring to action and use her fighting skills? And I think it's because she just never expected the Joker to enter her life when she was in that persona. Also, there's the humor in it all for the Joker, and to some degree the irony that he, in an effort to get to Gordon, accidentally gets to Batman as well, because he has no idea that he shot Barbara Gordon. And the whole point of it is it's supposed to underscore that Barbara kind of exists in the heart of or in this case, the crosshairs of the Batman-Jim Gordon relationship. So the first half of the movie, if they wanted to add a prologue, really should have underscored how Barbara lived in the middle. That she was kind of like, if you had a Venn diagram of, Batman and Jim Gordon, she would be smack in the center of it. And that she was not only a connection between the two men, but a liability. And I think that would have been fascinating. And unfortunately, so that's what they could have reinforced. And instead, they focused on just sexualizing the character in a misguided attempt to earn that R rating. And come on, when you have the Joker, there are much darker, fascinating, and appropriate to the story ways that you can earn an R rating. Like, for instance, I thought some of that stuff with the dentists was, very macabre, and I thought effective. Now, the best thing about this, by far and away, this whole debacle, is Mark Hamill's voice work. And I saw a couple of people talking about that online, and I agree that Mark Hamill's work here is the most nuanced that he's ever done. And to his credit, his line readings are spectacular, save for one, which is so bad and such a disservice to the source material. But first, I want to praise him and say that for the most part, he made this Joker seem more like an actual person than just an elusive monster like he usually comes across, which is the whole point of the Killing Joke story to some degree as well. So kudos to Mark Hamill for his work here, and I've never felt that Mark Hamill is as good an actor as I do here. I mean, wow, I was like, the craftsmanship, good for you, Hamill. But this isn't a story about the Joker anymore. It's a story about Barbara Gordon, and the Joker has become a supporting player. And that's really sad. Now, I said that he messed up a line, and that was the very last line in the Killing Joke story. It's an iconic line. It's supposed to boil down the relationship, the futility of the relationship between Batman and the Joker. But the way it's delivered here, they say in comedy, timing is everything, and the timing on this joke is way off. And also, it seems almost like a throwaway instead of really, playing up the importance of the exchange. And that's, I think, in a nutshell, the problem with how they told the Killing Joke story. It almost seems like the filmmakers here are more interested in the Barbara Gordon half of the movie, because they're like, that's what we're adding to it, than what Alan Moore and Brian Boland did originally. Because the second half of the movie actually feels, and that's what they're supposed to be adapting, that feels rushed. There are some really great lines that are cut, like, for instance, the whole exchange about the wig. They only did half of it. I'm like, you didn't have the best part of that exchange. And I think they could have easily, it's only a 77-minute movie, they could have easily stretched the Killing Joke all on its own to fill that time and made it very atmospheric and sophisticated. So it's really a shame that they did not do that. I also think that Batman comes across incredibly poorly, and I'm not even talking about his interactions with Barbara. I think that the filmmakers and Kevin Conroy make him seem robotic, and while it's interesting that while Mark Hamill is able to rise to the occasion with the material demands, Kevin Conroy cannot. And his Batman does not have the emotional urgency of someone who is afraid, a man who is afraid that if he continues with this dance, he will be forced to commit the ultimate sin, murder, which is something, of course, that Batman is so against because after what happened to his parents. So that, Mark Hamill's really only having a one-sided conversation with himself. So the joke at the end of the day is this adaptation, and I really do honestly feel that it's going to be hard for Bruce Timm and Brian Azzarello to overcome this, and people will always remember what they did to this story. And I hope that they announced that they're doing a Batman and Harley Quinn original movie by Bruce Timm, and I hope he doesn't double down on this hypersexualization. Harley, of course, is a much more sexual character, but still, there's more to her than that, and I hope that Bruce Timm, I know that they've had a very bad reaction to the response at Comic-Con. They were yelling at fans at the panel. But I hope that once that initial anger and maybe a little bit of embarrassment about what they've done and like the oh crap moment passes, they'll take these notes to heart and not do it again. All right, so that's my review of The Killing Joke. I'd be very curious to hear your thoughts down below. And thank you so much for discussing the movie with me. And you can check out some other episodes right now.